Hi, I'm Tess Richmond.
Hi, my name is Bailey Howard, and we are the worker bees.
Eutrophication occurs when nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen run off into bodies of water where it accumulates in dense quantities. The excess nutrients cause an increase of algae and other aquatic plant growth to occur, and increased competition for oxygen and sunlight, depleting the ecosystem of its oxygen. The hypoxic zone negatively impacts aquatic biodiversity, human health, and related industries like tourism and wildlife-dependent recreation. This aquatic pollution has become a serious problem in river basins all over the world, including the Gulf of Mexico. There are many theories as to why an excess of nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen are depleting the oxygen content in the Gulf of Mexico. Where does it come from? Who is to blame? In 2000, the National Science and Technology Council's Committee on Environment and Natural Resources assessment of hypoxia in the northern Gulf of Mexico found that the primary factors which contribute to the eutrophication of the Gulf are due to human activities, such as precipitation runoff from fertilizer applicants, industrial sources, and sewage treatment plants. In 2016, the hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico was one of the largest ever recorded, and is projected to keep increasing in size and severity. How did we get to this point? The continued expansion of the hypoxic zone directly correlates to the rapid growth of the human population on this planet, specifically in the Midwest region of the United States. As projected by the United States Census Bureau, the Midwest population is expected to increase by 100 million by the year 2060. According to a study done by Bioscience, due to the population increase, the amount of food produced on this planet has quadrupled in the past 75 years alone. This demand has put a burden on the agricultural industry and has resulted in industrial farming and heavy use of fertilizers. The United States Committee on Environmental and Natural Resources found that the agricultural practices between the 1950s and 1980s, such as pasture production and crop harvests, increased around 2.4 times, and as a result, the use of phosphorus-based fertilizers more than tripled. Phosphate-based fertilizers are effective in high crop yields. For that reason, industrial farms tend to be over-fertilized. It is estimated by the Environmental Protection Agency that only 15 to 30% of the phosphorus in industrial fertilizers are processed by crops. The inefficiency of fertilizer application contributes to the agricultural nitrogen runoff input from precipitation runoff. Precipitation runoff is the transportation of soluble nitrogen in precipitation from crops that did not use it to streams that eventually flow into river basins. The increasing production of crops, along with the large amount of excess nitrogen from crops, only increases the amount of agricultural runoff. Even though the biogeochemical phosphorus and nitrogen cycles are naturally affected by eutrophication, the phosphorus cycle has undoubtedly been affected more by human intervention. Unfortunately, agricultural runoff is not the only source of nutrient loading in the Mississippi River. With phosphorus being a key component in food growth, the demand for the nutrient has resulted in the mining of phosphorus. The demand for phosphorus mining not only affects the environment in which it occurs, but also the natural phosphorus cycle from the high phosphate concentrated mining waste. Another contributor is sewage runoff. As nutrient naturally circulates through the food chain, phosphorus ends up in human excretion. The overflow and stormwater discharge from sewage systems cause nutrient-packed human waste to enter water bodies in the form of sewage runoff, which contribute to eutrophication. Due to the projected increase of the human population, the amount of human waste is also increasing. This directly results in an increase of sewage overflow and runoff into nearby water bodies. The loading of phosphorus due to agricultural runoff into an aquatic system allows algae to grow unchecked and leads to these large algal blooms that have large-scale negative impacts on the ecosystem. During these large blooms, certain types of algae can grow that release toxins. Plankton feed on these toxic algae, and the toxin moves up the food chain, resulting in high rates of mortality in shellfish, fish, and marine mammals. The massive amount of decomposition in the water leads to hypoxia, the lack of oxygen in the water as oxygen is consumed as the algae decompose. Hypoxia can lead to massive fish kills due to lack of oxygen in an aquatic ecosystem. In addition to negative impacts on the ecosystem level, there are also negative repercussions for humans and society. As described previously, some of the algae blooms caused by phosphorus loading can release toxins into the water. These toxins, known as cyanotoxins, can cause serious health concerns to humans, resulting from contact and ingestion. Currently, many beaches along the Gulf have issued public swimming advisories. These advisories have huge economic costs. In a technical report by Woods Hole Institute, it was estimated that between 1987 and 1992 alone, the economic impact to recreation from harmful algal blooms was roughly $29 million.
Excess nutrients in the Gulf of Mexico are supplied by a variety of sources, which are known as direct drivers. As previously discussed, the main direct drivers that are causing the eutrophication in the Gulf include agricultural and a variety of waste runoff. The indirect drivers, which influence the direct drivers, provide a clear model of how and why nutrients are entering the Gulf. Along with population increase and the demand for food, urbanization also plays a major role as an indirect driver in the problem of excess nutrient waste entering the Gulf of Mexico. Urbanization has resulted in property development and the use of impervious surfaces such as concrete. The development is replacing wetlands, Mississippi's natural nutrient buffer system. Wetlands, which line the banks of many water bodies, work to improve the overall water quality and actually decrease the continuation of nutrients downstream. Naturally, wetlands in the Mississippi would work as a natural filtration system for the excess nutrient inputs. However, according to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resource, 25 to 36 square miles of Mississippi wetland is lost per year. Luckily, we are able to use data in order to track the rate in which wetlands are being lost. These sustainability indicators can be used to monitor the current state of eutrophication in the Gulf of Mexico, along with tracking and projecting the increase of population, which was mentioned earlier. We can also monitor the input of nutrients, such as nitrogen, into the Mississippi. According to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, the amount of nitrogen alone in the Mississippi River has increased significantly since the mid-20th century, with an average yearly discharge of about 1.6 metric tons. What comes next? Future scenarios involving the condition of the aquatic ecosystem in the Gulf of Mexico generate a positive outcome and a negative one. Both scenarios are driven by the behavior and actions of the economic structure, political organizations, social policy, the international situation, and the health of the ecosystem. Economically, if the hypoxic zone decreases, the marine life population in the Gulf will increase, which would result in the fishing and tourist industry in the Gulf regaining financial stability. However, if business were to continue as usual, and the size of the hypoxic zone continued to increase, there would be a collapse of the fishing industry in the Gulf of Mexico, along with a major loss of tourism and recreation revenue along the Gulf Coast. Politically, if the United States realizes the value of wetlands and the affected aquatic ecosystems, the government could implement policies to resist environmental destruction for land development and promote wetland restoration, restoring the Mississippi's natural nutrient buffer system. However, if business were to continue as usual, all existing wetlands could disappear. Socially, if awareness about pesticides and agricultural runoff grows in the United States, the demand for organic food could increase. This could result in the replacement of phosphorus fertilizers with biodynamic and other organic farming practices, which would reduce agricultural runoff. However, if business were to continue on as usual, the inefficient industrial farming practice could continue, resulting in the continued increase of nutrient runoff in the Gulf. Internationally, the world could follow the trend of the United States with enforcing wetland protection, increasing the overall well-being of the planet. However, if business continued on as usual and we failed to act as an example for environmental stewardship, the planet's ecosystem could be further degraded, eventually falling into an irreversible environmental devastation. With ecosystem health, if the nutrient load discharge in the Mississippi River decreases, oxygen levels will balance in the Gulf, reestablishing its rich biodiversity. However, if business continued as usual, nutrient levels in the Gulf of Mexico will increase exponentially, along with the size of the dead zone, resulting in a complete collapse of the biodiversity and natural species in the Gulf. Currently, we are experiencing the outcome of the last paradigm shift into an industrialized world. With short-term focus on sustaining the growing population, we have come to face numerous environmental issues like that of eutrophication. To achieve the vision of reducing the hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico, a new paradigm shift would be necessary. This shift would focus on the long-term effects of our current system. In detailing a vision for eutrophication in the Gulf of Mexico, it is important to think not just about repairing past damage, but making tangible plans for reducing further negative impacts. Politically, the government will begin to implement a tax on synthetic fertilizers. Also, federal and state policies will be created to set legal limits to the amount of nutrient loading permissible by farmers, the amount of nitrous oxide emitted by industries, and the amount of wetland destruction allowed for development, among others. Publicly, grassroots campaigns will educate the public about the causes of eutrophication and the effects nutrient runoff is having on the Gulf, developing public support to curb growth of hypoxic zone. There will also be support for community-based management efforts by organizing local farmers into monitoring groups where the farmers in those communities that aren't meeting federally or state-imposed nutrient loading limits must pay a fine that goes back into the operating budget for the community-based management regime. In terms of technology, biological nutrient control processes will be installed in sewage treatment plants, reducing the risk of sewage waste runoff. Also, efficient buffer technology will be developed and implemented in order to manage nutrient runoff in the Mississippi River. This will include where to place the buffer zones, how big to make it, and what to include in it. Financially, tax rebates will be provided to conventional farmers that transition from synthetic fertilizer use to organic fertilizer use. Also, the government will subsidize organic farming, thereby lowering the price of organic products, which in turn will push consumer habits towards organic goods.
Eutrophication is a sustainable problem that can't afford to be ignored, especially when it comes to the well-being of the Gulf of Mexico and all those who rely on its abundant resources. Thank you for watching.